All right. So this training is to uh, walk through the workflow of collecting cultural resources inventory. Uh, it says 2021 here, but it's for the year 2022. And we have contractors on board who are going to be part of this. So the first landing page, the first stop in this process is to go to what we call DCR uh, hub page. Oh, and I'm Chandra Lahiri. I'm the one doing the training. The DCR hub page, that is the URL for it. You can just go to the homepage, which will bring you here. This is viewable to the public. A lot of the content on this is not public. This particular map is currently public, but it should be available to our contractors or anyone else. Once you go here, if you go to the GIS projects page, this is basically a landing page with cards or areas for various different GIS projects that are cooking in the GIS office for the DCR. This is the card that we're going to talk about. All the links that you need to access in order to collect CRI data, cultural resources inventory data, are available on this map, on this card. It means that you don't have to worry about having the latest URL. I'll be updating those on the back end of this card. So there's two things we're going to talk about today. One is the workflow. There's a 3-step workflow to adding points to the CRI dataset and populating all its attributes. And that's the section up here. The lower section is about resources. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at some of the resources, the most important one of which is the CRI schema document. I'm going to copy this right now and put it in the chat for people who are in this meeting so they can follow along if they would like. So there. I'm going to start by going over the schema document. Here at Department of Conservation and Recreation, when we undertake a large-scale GIS project, when we start incubating it and talking about what needs to be done for the project, we start by very clearly laying out what this data set will be. What is it? How are we going to collect it? What are the different steps along the way? What are the attributes? Is it a point, line, or polygon? What do we expect people to observe? What do we mean when we say something? So we're going to jump right into that so that we have an idea. This first link is on our SharePoint site. For a lot of you from BSc, unfortunately, you don't have access to that. I uploaded the same thing to Google Docs and it is publicly available. So if you click over here, you should have access to it. After this meeting's over, I'll go and make sure that I replace that with the latest version of this, just to make sure. I don't think anything's changed, but just in case. And maybe, Jeffrey, for the duration of this project, while we have BSc working on this, maybe this should become our master one, just because it's too much of a pain to try and keep track of both. But for now, I believe this is the latest, so I'm just going to open that one up. So this is a spreadsheet, but in my world, in my life, I use them a lot to plan all of our work. So the first tab you'll find is the workflow. This is kind of similar to what you saw over there, the step 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go through that real quick. So there's 3 parts: desk work, followed by field work, followed by follow-up desk work. Step 1 for the desk work, the goal is to add points to the relevant data set from the desktop using existing records for guidance. Jeffrey, they are going to be doing this, right? Okay, Jeffrey, that's correct. So you have access to a lot of hard copy records the DCR has about where certain cultural resources are, information about it, initial locations, some information from reports that already exist. So this is kind of a pre-population step where you open the link that's provided to you. That would be this link right here. And you log in with your ArcGIS Online credentials. We're going to figure this out with BSc and we'll make sure that you have a way of doing this. Once you've logged in with your credentials, you're able to add points, fill out attributes, edit any points that you added now or even earlier, and attach any photos or documents that needed to be attached. Some fields cannot be filled out at the desk and will require in-person observations. So Similarly, some points are also not going to qualify for being added in the field. Also, some points, or almost all the points that you do add in this first step from the desk, will require a follow-up visit in the field to take pictures, to make observations about some attributes in the attribute table that you cannot possibly know sitting at your desk. So step one, the desk work, which is, it's marked as optional because the way we envisage this data set being used is once the bulk of it is built out, this is going to be a living, breathing data set that staff from our Office of Cultural Resources, from other people, maybe foresters and operations and management, will have the ability to add points to it while they're out and about. So it will not be quite such a well thought out process. A lot of them may skip this first step and go straight to the second step. I'm here, I'm by this park, and I see this thing. I pull up my map and I'm like, oh, this isn't in the CRI data set. Why isn't it in there? I will fix that right now. Bink. And they drop a point. So that's why the first one is optional. It's integral to the right. Sorry about that interruption. Um, right. The first step is integral to the current workflow. In the future, and even right now, we see many people skipping the first step. So that's what the first step is. It's going to start with the desk, for which we have this link set up, CRI desk work map. I'm not very creative with my naming conventions, but the good thing is it tells you exactly what it is. That's for desk work. Step two takes you into the field. Let's assume you've added the points from the desk initially. Now you do the follow-up. You visit the resource in the field. You you may edit new points that you see in the field you did not know about when you were back at the desk. You could be editing points that are already added from the desktop. That means you might be moving them because now you have a better idea of where they are. And of course, you are going to be filling out fields that you could not have filled from the desk. And you might be editing some fields that you filled from the desk. You thought it was a certain thing. Now that you're here, you find, oh, it isn't quite that. So you have an option here to add points and their attributes and their photos. You have the option to edit them. How you do this is where you need a smart device, which may or may not have cell service. If you have a data plan, then that usually is the most efficient way to go about it because any edits you make to the data happen directly to the data set that is hosted in the cloud in ArcGIS Online. Um, the app that we've set up for use here is called Field Maps, which you must download to your phone or your tablet. It works for Android, Apple, and I believe Windows. It's free. You do a search for Esri app. You do a search for Esri Field Apps. Once you have the app on your smart device, you log in with your ArcGIS Online credentials. You open the fieldwork map that has been created for you, and then you're off to the races doing all the things that you could do before. You add points, you edit points, you fill out attributes, you attach photos, whatever have you. The note here is you're still not done. You have one more step left. But yeah, that's what this is about. This is a good time to point out another resource available for you. If you go back to our GIS Hub site, the center page over here for tutorials, the very first row holds some tutorials that I have made on using field maps. And this was made for Android. The the iOS versions are very, very similar. They're just, you know how it is when you hop from one system to the other. Things are just in a little bit of a different place. You might go top right instead of bottom left. The overflow button versus some other thing. Once you figure out the one step of it, the rest of it will translate. I found that people who learn the Android version have no trouble figuring it out on the iPad or iPhone and vice versa. So I've taken the easy way around. There's just the one here. Um, there are 3 tutorials here on how I highly recommend going through all of it. It's a little bit dated. I think it's from 2018 or 2017, but not a whole lot has changed since then. It's enough to get you started. This is also going to be an important um, resource to know how you can use field maps forms from the desktop. I'm just giving you an idea of what this looks like. This is meant for you to browse on your own, and it'll step you through everything with screen grabs and what I hope is easy to follow instructions. So, and I'm trying to see, yeah. So these again are in our SharePoint, but you have access to the exact same thing on Google Drive. These all correspond with to uh, the SharePoint file. So feel free to browse through 1, 2, 3, and then that one. Okay. So that's the second part, which is a fieldwork part. The third part is a follow-up work, which happens back at the desk. So some fields will need to be filled out at the desk, referring to information in files or other GIS datasets. The other thing you have the ability to do from the desk work app is to use the batch edit tool, which is a huge time saver and an error prevention device, which is, if you repeatedly, let's say you've dropped 50 points during field work today into the objects dataset that describes objects of cultural significance. And there are certain fields that repeat across all those 50 points. Your name, the date, the name of the 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 area or the location, maybe even the type of point that you've dropped. Of the 15, 10 of them were the exact same thing, right? Markers or something. The batch tool gives you the ability to select all of them at once, like all the points that you have dropped today. Maybe you apply some filters to it first to really drive down to the ones you know that were yours and not someone else's. You get to enter all that repetitive information once, and the system puts it into all the fields for you. It's a time saver. It's also a big error prevention method. It's a job that you can put off doing in the field because it's a really big waste of your time to be entering those repeatedly, and you'll get to it when you get to the desk, and you can all do it in one batch. So that's one of the things that you do in the follow-up work. And then there will be some fields that there'll be some information you'll have to chase up, and all of the above. This app, which I forgot to show you, let's go back to the projects page and the CRI tab. This is step 3, so this is the map. This is the link that you click on to be able to do step 3. Yeah, so that's the overall workflow. Like again, in the long life of this data set, step 1 will always not be step 1. Some people will be starting on step 2. Believe it or not, you also have the option of doing the whole thing in step 3. You have the ability to add points in step 3. So this is just the little dance routine we have set up for now. It is a living, breathing thing. It may be changing in the future. So in my new CRI schema spreadsheet, that would be the workflow tab. Working our way to the right, this is an overview of the model. Be good to zoom out a little bit. Here we go. So this is a slightly complicated data set in that it was a mammoth task to reduce the nuances and the layers within cultural resources to flat models. And the best that we could do was come up with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data sets, and a 6th that's a catch-all for stuff that isn't covered in any one of these. To break it down very simply, the structures GIS dataset, all of these are points datasets. The structures dataset represents resources that are functional constructions made usually for purposes other than human shelter. If it's human shelter, there's a good chance that observation belongs in the buildings dataset, which is a structure made for human shelter, amongst other things. Objects are cultural resources that are primarily artistic in nature or relatively small in scale, simply constructed. Landscapes data represents cultural resources that are geographic areas. They could be natural, they could be cultural, they could be associated with a historic event, activity, person, or any other kind of aesthetic value that has a cultural import to it. I do not pretend to understand the nuances of this. Jeff Harris is your guy. I'm sure some of you will understand this much better, that you won't need the help that I would. I just build the stuff. I don't actually go out and collect the data, so my knowledge is skin deep, unfortunately. Burial grounds are what you think they are. And field observations catch-all is for if you're in the field or you've come across something in a file, you think it's really important it be counted. It doesn't belong anywhere here. Stick it in the catch-all data set. We might, over time, if we accumulate enough of those, maybe it'll lead to the birth of another data set. Or we might parse it into one of these others, or it might just stay there and be a bona fide data set all by itself. So those are your 6 big flavors of when you're in the field or at the desk and trying to decide where the heck do I put this observation? This is the menu that you order your meal off of, and you decide what you're going to have. So that was the first step of deciding what kind of cultural resources you will be capturing in your geospatial database. The next thing is GIS data has a geospatial component, which is where it is on the Earth. A point data set will just be identified by its latitude and longitude. So when you place a point on a map, that's what it is. It's a point. But the second part of GIS is describing that point that you just placed, that feature that you just created. That is captured in an attribute table. And if you're already GIS experts, just your eyes can glaze over this part, but I'm talking to everyone. So the way GIS datasets work is every point that you drop in a point dataset gets a little record, a line in a table. That table is called an attribute table. And the fields in that table, just like in an Excel spreadsheet, each field is called an attribute, which describes an attribute of that data. Like how we have vital statistics, your name, age, address, date of birth, phone number. These fields are basically the vital statistics of the data set. So the structures data set, every point that you drop gets a row in a table. And in that table, pre-formatted are certain fields that describe this structure. And you get to fill in every single field for that one particular structure. A point you drop here might have a different set of attributes. A point you drop there will almost certainly have a different set of attributes, and so on and so forth. So when we came down to trying to consider what are these attributes that describe these resources to the degree that we need them to, we realized that there are a lot of common fields that we need to capture for all of them. For instance, there are a lot of I'm looking at this in SharePoint, so it's not vertical, but for instance, there are a group of important fields that have to do with when was this resource visited in the field? When was the information last updated? Which could be a totally different date from when you actually visited it in the field. Who did the visit? What's the name? There's another set of fields that are required. What is the source for this point that is in this data set? Did you make it up? Did you look at it on a map? Were you in the field? What is the condition of it? What is its structural integrity? What is the management? There's other fields that describe its basic information, like the name and the numbers and the lat and the long. There is information. There's a whole set of fields that are about the designations that they currently have. That are all of these. There are threats that are observed to the resources, which are all these fields together kind of describe the threats that are observed. All of these fields together describe planning recommendations made. All of these fields describe the treatment recommendations made. All of these fields describe management recommendations. Then just a general comments field for anything you really think you need to record. All of these are the common fields. Each one of these data sets are going to have all of these fields across the top of the table. In addition, the structures dataset has these fields that are very unique to the structures dataset. So, for instance, what type of structure is it? What is its primary material, secondary material? I don't know what that means. We'll find out later. The buildings dataset will have all of these common fields. In addition, it'll have these fields that specifically describe aspects of a building, which is very different from a structure. So that Jeffrey and everyone else in DCR has what they need, know what they need to know about a structure. Same thing for objects. It has all of these common fields, plus it has all of these object-specific fields. Same for landscape, same for burials. Field observations, catch-all data set, just has 4 large notes fields. Put in whatever you need to. And the reason they're broken up into 4 is you might want to collect information on where it is in notes 1. Notes 2 could be about what else, some other aspect of it. And remember, these also have the common fields, so you're going to be able to capture a lot of the similar, so that if ever we decide to move a point from here into one of these other data sets, look, a lot of the common fields have already been filled out. In addition, those are for other notes. So that, at the risk of making you deaf from listening to my voice, is a description of kind of the, hello, good to meet the data set. Working our way through this schema table. Okay, these next few, this, all the way until here. If these words look familiar to you, because it's one tab per data set. So this was an overview of these are what all the fields are in the common set of fields. These are the fields and structures. Each one of these fields, so this tab is actually going to now tell you the details about each one of these fields. The structures data set, it's not going to bother to explain to you what the common fields are. You'll find those here. The structures data set is going to tell you what these fields are all about. So I'm just going to probably deal with the common fields one. And please don't be intimidated. This is there's a lot of information here. It's super busy and noisy because this is kind of what Jeffrey and I use as our command central. Like I literally call this command central. It's where we plan the data. It's where we plan tweaks. It's where we remind ourselves about what we're doing. Some of the data here is only for the GIS people to create the data set. Ones that are going to be useful to you, I'm just going to give you a guided tour of the whole thing. The first row is where Jeffrey and I talk to each other. Like, look, question for CL. Will photos be time-stamped? Yes, they will. But I forgot to answer it. So this is where Jeffrey and I'll be like, do we need to change something about this? So ignore that. The second row, and this tells you what it is. These are the groups for the smart form that I've set up for you. So it's just instructions to the GIS developer. Ignore that. This third row is the field name. This is literally what the name of the field is in the GIS data set. It is also what you will see on the forms when you collect data. So it's nice for you to know. This is probably the most important row for your purposes, where it tells you exactly what we mean when we say info update. And this is as much for Jeffrey and I to remember what we were thinking of at the time as it is to you, the data collector and developer. It is also important to the eventual consumers of the data, because they're not going to know any more than we do at this stage, or that you do at this stage, what the difference is between these two fields. So it's for the consumer, it's for the developer, it's for the creator. It's where we really flesh out what we want this to be. This is just a shorter version of this, and it's a tooltip that actually floats on your smart form when you see the smart form, so that you don't have to go back to this every time. So this is the long description of what this field means. This is the short description. And then all of this, honestly, is for us GIS people, right? Is it a date? Is it a time? Where do we want the people to enter it from? Am I going to set up a default value for this field? Just ignore all of this. This is for the data people. This is the other important thing or interesting thing for you to know. For this field, for instance, at source, it is a text type of field and it's a pick list. And when you click on that little down arrow for that field in your form, these are the values that you can expect to see in them. The other really important thing you'll have, and it's kind of towards the bottom of this page, is some of these have cheat sheets. This conditions form, not only does it have a pick list, the pick list is a cheat sheet. Actually, Jeffrey, could I ask you, I don't know if we talked about this before, but could you put the cheat sheets from everything onto the cheat sheet tab? Like literally, yeah, yep, yep. Oh, okay. This is why it doesn't happen during live trainings. But if you could just move that there so that all you guys would do is, if you just print off that one sheet from there, you're good. So this is, I think it's worth my time to talk about this for a quick minute. Condition, which is a common field, so it occurs in every single data set, is a super important attribute that most GIS data require when you're inventorying assets of any kind in the field. It's also the most nebulous thing to pin down. What the heck does it mean? What does good mean to you? It could be completely different from what good means to me. So this is our best attempt of building a kind of rubric that'll help you, the data collector, make consistent observations and to take, you know, subjectivity out of it. This is also what will inform the end user as to what they understand. So for instance, this is what the pick list will show. This is what the value will, so when you drop a point, say in the buildings database, and you're filling out attributes, you come to the one called condition. And you click on the little down arrow. This is the drop-down list that falls down. How are you to decide what the difference between fair and poor is, for instance, which is a tough one, right? Good and excellent is also kind of hard, right? So what you want to do is we came up with these three measures. When you look at the resource, these are the three lenses through which you look at it. You look at the level of deterioration of that resource, either by natural or by human forces. You also look at the frequency of its maintenance, best that you can tell. Or maybe you have access to records. That's the best that you can tell. You also think about what would happen if no corrective action was taken. And then if you have a yes in any one of these three, it tells you what you should pick from the pick list. So for instance, something that if you picked the excellent value for that particular building that you visited, for instance, this is what would qualify a building to be excellent. There should be no deterioration. There should be regular frequency of maintenance. And if you were to not correct anything, really, there'd be no skin off of anyone's back, right? As opposed to when you would do something, when you would call something good is where there's a little bit of deterioration, but it's kind of stable. Frequency of maintenance, best as I can tell, it's infrequent. And you know what? If we don't do anything about it, it will deteriorate in about 5 years. If any one of these is true, it goes into good. If any one of these is true, it no longer belongs in excellent. So you instantly know to bump it down. Now, what if as you're looking at it, so basically when you're looking at a resource, it's kind of like playing bingo. You got to look at your card and see which one you can check off, which one can you stamp. If there's evidence of major deterioration, even just having all of these, maybe it's got regular frequency of maintenance. Maybe the implication of corrective action is none. But you know what? You got a bingo stamp on this cell. So I'm afraid these two no longer qualify. So am I correct in saying, Jeffrey, just correct me if I'm wrong, the worst observation you have drives what you pick from this pick list, correct? Okay, so that's us erring on the side of caution, that maybe everything else is good, but we have decided that these are the three yardsticks with which you measure, and a bad reading on one. I'm trying to think if this has a good analogy with cholesterol and the good and the bad, and I'm failing. But maybe, if that works, use that. Um, Critical failure is, that's pretty sad. I don't know if at that point you're maybe picking up the phone and calling Jeffrey. No longer extant. That also looks very silly, but you could very well be sent there because you thought there was something there, but somebody mowed over it last week. So that's relevant. That's also something you may want to drop a point to say, like, because it's a bit of a logical fallacy, right? If it's no longer extant, why are you dropping the point? Or how do you know it's not there if it isn't there? And it's because you have reason to believe. You either see some evidence that there was something there that's being raised over, or you have paper records or some other kind of record that led you there. So that's an important one. Not assessed means, I'm not sure when we would use that, Jeffrey. Probably that I went there to assess it and I was not able to. Not exactly sure. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the answer to that for the recording is use when point was entered from desk, no field visit yet. Jeffrey, if there's a way to make that a little more elegant so that it's legible to people? Because oh no, I put it in the wrong place, didn't I? It goes there. Yeah. Sorry, that was not entirely clear to me. This might also be something you want to put into the condition here in red. Just say that if this point has not been visited on the field list yet, please pick not assessed yet for condition. Right? Oh, I'm sorry. It defaults to that. Sorry about that. So here's an example of for the condition field, the minute you drop a point, where there's a default value, this automatically gets calculated for that point. So the default here is not assessed. So the minute you drop a point, that field gets auto-calculated to not assessed. And that's to cover the fact that you might have added it from the desk. So I'm not going to put that burden on you that now please go say not assessed. And if you're in the field, when you do finally end up in the field, you just go switch that to whatever condition applies. So yeah, so that's the other useful thing about the schema sheet here is that you will occasionally find cheat sheets. I think that might be really the only big one. I feel like Integrity had one. We don't have it here. Okay. It, okay. So this is oh, so is a cheat sheet coming here then? You'll add that? No? Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, if you wouldn't mind adding it here, that would be great. If you could just add it here to say where that is. Ah, is it just not showing? Look at that. Okay, we have to find a solution to this. Maybe just merge this like that so that it becomes slightly bigger. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jeffrey. All right, there we go. So a couple of cheat sheets here. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So name of the field, what it means, and what the pick lists are, and cheat sheets if any. And I think this we really just have the one, but Jeffrey will put it here in case it makes it easier for you to sorry, that was my example. In case it makes it easier for you to print that out. So that's the common fields. The others are super simple. It's very similar to what you saw before, only these are the specific fields for the structures data set. So when you go to fill out structure type, there's really nothing much to describe. That's a structure type. Here is the list of options you will see, and so on and so forth. Same for buildings, same for objects, landscapes, burial grounds, catch-all. You may ignore all of these. This is all for us, how the sausage is being made, kind of things. Um, yeah, Python code. You probably don't need any of that. So that's about it for the schema document. I would highly recommend referring to this the very first time you're in the field or even at the desk filling out points. Just look at it one time, and then these short descriptions will be available to you in the form. But I would use this even the first few times to make sure you've got the gist of it. So I know that seemed like a lot. Now you've looked at an X-ray of the data and what it is. So we're gonna go right into step one. Actually, I should pause to say, are there any questions at this point? No? Okay. I'm a little confused. I think, is this me? I'm just going to pause the recording. Okay, recording's unpaused. So this is the very first step of the desk work. This is a web map, and Due to some restrictions of the technology right now, this is the way that I need to offer it to you. It is a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm going to, those of you who are familiar with the new map viewer, go to town. But those of you who are not, I'm going to do my best to tell you about the few things that are important at this point. This layers, when you turn on, it's a toggle on, no, off, on. When the toggle is turned on, it tells you what data layers are loaded in this map. These are the ones that are on by default. You can turn them off by clicking on the little eye symbol and turn them back on again. Towns is off, but it can be turned on. Similarly, this is historic CRI data that we was attempted to be collected many years ago. I'm not exactly sure when. So I'm going to unpause the recording and to just recap what Jeffrey was saying. These two data sets come from an effort in the 1980s by an old version of our agency, what it was before it was DCR, to document cultural resources. They were not really visited in the field, and they represent some field work that was done. So they are there in this project as a reference point. Should you visit this area, it'll give you an idea of what was considered a cultural resource back in the 80s. Is that about right, Jeffrey? Is that a good summary? Okay. So again, you can turn these off. Mass Historic Commission data. One thing that's helpful here is, I believe, if you click on the three buttons, the ellipses, and say show properties. Okay, I take it back. That is not useful at all. Please go away. There. I guess I clicked there to make it go away. This is macris data for anyone who's familiar with it. I was hoping that this would take you to the page for that data and describe it. I am struggling a little bit to know where to go to do that. I'm not very familiar with the new map viewer. It's public data. George, if you can help me out later, that would be great. Just where it is. Anyway, that's what that is. DCR owned and managed lands, which is on. These are lands that are owned and managed by DCR. These two layers work in conjunction with each other, and they tell you what the DCR administrative regions are. These big fat red lines are districts. Wait, this is a good time to look at the legend. If you go to the legend, it tells you. So the big fat is actually a district. So all the blues together are the west region. The big fat line tells you this is one district. And if you click on it, it tells you that it's in the west region. The district is called a mountain district. And the particular, that blue line, this little polygon over here is a complex. So complex nest into districts, districts nest into regions. So that's what they are. And the legend really does tell the story nicely, that this is the lightest blue here. These two are mountains district. This is one complex. This is another complex. The lakes district are these three middle blues, and the darkest three blues are the Connecticut River Valley district. To find out what each one of the black lines tell you what each complex name is. So if you click in this corner one, it tells you it's the Beartown complex, which is part of the Lakes district, which is part of the West region. So that's how. I don't know that you're going to need this a whole lot, but if you do, that's where it is. I'm going to go back to the layers view and turn this off because it is too busy. So you've already seen the layers view helps, the legend helps. Should you want to change the base map, you can go switch to any one of these. Some are better than the others. The 2019 orthos are really nice. They're not available for the whole state, I believe. And MassGIS actually has newer ones, which I have really not tested this very much. Oh, looks like it drew everywhere. So that might be good. How do I go back? I think the default that I use is streets. And I know one of these is a happy one, another one is not. Yeah, I think it might be this one. This one's got a little hill shading on it, and I like it. But it's do whatever you'd like. They may just not all behave. Don't I have nothing to do with it. So sorry about that. Um, so that's what you do over here. Over on this side, none of these matter. None of these matter. This is where all the work is happening. Edit. So this is we're in step one of the workflow where you're entering points from your desktop. This map, right? This is this map. I'm gonna add a point. My heartfelt request to you as you're playing around with this and warming up, please drop all your points in Rhode Island. No offense, Steve, but we don't care about Rhode Island right now. And someone else, Gretchen. Yeah. we we love you, but we're dropping all sorts of crazy points in you right now. Connecticut too. I don't really care for Connecticut. Go ahead, drop points in Connecticut. We'll just blow them all away. Just don't do anything in Massachusetts unless it's bona fide. So, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you add a feature. You, big surprise, add a feature. And then you decide which one of these lovely data sets do I put it in. Well, what I'm looking at right now looks a lot like a building. So first I'm going to zoom in using my scroll bar. And I'm going to drop it in the middle of a pond so that it's even more ridiculous than just being in Rhode Island. Sorry, I'm really being mean today. But here we go. A building in the middle of Stump Pond. As soon as I drop it, this is what we call a smart form. It's really quite smart. Um, this is those gajillion fields I showed you in Excel, but they've been organized in groups that make marginally more sense than when I showed you a big collection. So the very first group, this is to expand or collapse the group. The very first are important fields. These fields must be filled in either while on location or in batch mode from the desk work map. So info update, and this is that. Remember I was showing you on the Excel sheet there was a long description and a short description. The short description is what comes up over here to refresh your memory as to what this is about. Initially, I would look at the spreadsheet, but this is what it is. It's the date of the most recent update, either from the field or from the desk. So if I was doing this from the desk, the visit date is only for the field visit. I would definitely not be filling out the visit date if I'm filling this from the desk. So I'm going to say it is 2/3/22. I'm going to skip. The little tooltip tells you, so it tells you the format that you need to enter it in, and it also gives you a tip as to what the heck this tool is about. So this one, it's telling me it's optional. It's the date of the last field visit. Only update from desk if batch editing field work points. So the only time I would fill this out from the desk is if I visited it in the field, and I did 30 points, and please don't make me fill out the date, today's date, for 30 points and waste my time in the field. So you fill it out in the field, you come back to the desk, you use the batch edit tool, and that's when you actually fill it out over here. But otherwise, you don't fill this out unless you've actually visited the field. The visit name, yeah, this you have to fill. You really should fill. And once I'm done with this, I collapse it for my sanity. The next group are the required fields. You must fill these in. If not, we will track you down. But really you won't be able to add the point if you don't. Let's collapse that or expand that and take a look. Source is super important, so we really want you to fill this in. So I'm just going to do other. And when it says comments, that means if you've said other, then please go ahead and say what that other is. So I'm going to zoom down all the way because comments is right at the end, because otherwise I'm going to forget to put it in later. Here we go. That's why I said other. The next thing I have to fill out is a condition. Remember how I said it's going to default to not assessed? So that I tried to use defaults to minimize the lift on your part. If it's a field that you may not be filling out, I'm not going to make you fill it out. I want to make you make it default. So I'm filling it out from the desktop. There's no way I can assess the condition of it, so I'm going to leave that be. Integrity, again, I wasn't in the field, can't assess it. Management, the type of current occupant. I think this is something we absolutely... So I'm going to show you something. Do you see how there's an add button down here and it's kind of grayed out? I can't click on it. And when I tried to skip that field, it yelled at me. Please select an item on the list. So that's some really nice error checking. I'm just going to say that. The building type is the primary use of the building. Note others in comments. So again, I'm just going to do that to demonstrate. If you do that, it's in your best interest to go all the way down. Oh, and here's another example. Training with BSc, that was for the source, right? So I should probably write it like that, right? That in the source field, it was training in BSc. And what is this that I picked other for? Management something? Did you guys notice what it... I think building type, BUI underscore type. So BUI underscore type. I picked other, and so I'm going to say training from home. Hopefully you're not going to be doing a lot of others because this is not fun. Building style, it goes to no style. But I'm going to pretend it's a colonial. I don't have any comments. Other observations about building type or style. If you have, just because we know it's really hard to make this comprehensive, if there's something you need to say about that colonial style of the building, this is your place to make a note. But this comment field specifically is for the building type. I'm sorry, not the style. This goes with building type. Building type comment. Building use current. I don't know if this defaults to recreational, or maybe that's what we did. Building use. And did you notice that this suddenly became active? It means I have now hit all the fields that are absolutely required. Doesn't mean I'm done. It means I can be done and do a shoddy job of filling out this form, but at least now I can go ahead. No comments, and it looks like I've come to the end of this group. I'm going to scroll up, collapse that. The next group of fields is basic information, resource name if known. It's not compulsory. None of these are compulsory. Fill them out if you know them. CRI number, it could if it has, and I think I'll let you read the Excel schema, and I'll ask you to direct these questions to Jeffrey, who knows the nitty gritty, how to fill this out. What facility it's in. So facility, town, things. These are fields that, again, this is where you can start interacting with this. Go to the layer. Turn on the town name. Oh, and you know what? That's for Massachusetts. It won't show me Rhode Island. I don't have Rhode Island towns on here, but if you were, please draw. It's not drawing. Oh, because I'm not in Massachusetts yet, sorry. There we go. If we were here, I would know that's Uxbridge and I'd put it in. Oh my goodness. Not sure. I don't even know where I am. Okay. Anyway, so that some of these fields you need to interact with the other layers in the map to fill them out. Construction date, designer. Let's just imagine you've filled all this out. You've collapsed that. The next group is designations. You'll notice these have all conveniently been defaulted to NA for you because you may have absolutely no observations to make. The ones there where you do, go ahead and put in the listings. Threats observed. Again, they've all been defaulted for you. Go and change what has to be changed. Planning recommendations, same. Again, if you can refer to, I mean, this will tell you some information, and then again, the first few times I would refer to the spreadsheet, and I highly recommend that you do some field pilot data points with Jeffrey along so that we can be sure that you're making these observations the way we envisioned you are. So Jeffrey, I recommend doing a little pilot training with everyone to make sure that they're entering it correctly, or even just have a back and forth, check the first few points so that it matches your vision. Because it's entirely possible we designed this wrong, right? We're getting a fresh set of eyes to look at it, and this is kind of our test to say, oh, we really overlooked something. Treatment recommendations, same thing. they're all about the same. And then you're left with the general comments. You hit add. So with that, we added the point, and I think it was on some stump pond. There it is. Our point got added. Unfortunately, this is not a very efficient system where you'll notice you can attach photos to it. Now, from the desktop, you probably don't have photos of the actual resource, but maybe you had a historic photo that is important to go along with it. And it's on your hard drive. You know, you found it in the file, you scanned it, you filed it. I would again talk to Jeffrey about some filing conventions. Where will you be putting these? Um, but the advantage of GIS data is you can now back up to where I'm back to this edit place. I do have a photograph of this. It's historic and it's really important to get stored with this point. What I would do is I would go in and edit the feature. Unfortunately, it's a two-step process. First, I added it. Then I went into edit. It does select feature to edit it. So I selected it. And you'll notice that exact same smart form shows up. This is also something you might want to do if you forgot something or if you discover a document that you didn't have when you first put it in. You can go in and edit any of these fields. But in addition, look what now opens up that you didn't have initially. You hit the add button. You browse to your data set, add a point, add a photo, and click add. That attachment has now, you also have the option of deleting the point because that's part of the edit feature. Now when I click on this, here's all my information. Here are all the things that I typed in, including the comment. Here's a photo that I just attached. How do I, oh, it's right here, hidden by the, yeah, and so on. So, thank you so much, Jeffrey. So I'm going to repeat this for the recording. That the photos are not meant to be, this ability to attach photo attachments is not meant to be a repository for data. The back end of it is that we have to actually pay for storing them. So we want to be judicious in the number of attachments we use. There are some things that are better off in reports. And even when it comes to attaching reports, I think if you get to that point, it's time to confer with Jeffrey and I. Attaching a report also increases the size of the data, makes it swell, costs us money, and we're going to make some decisions at that point. Do we want the reports to be attached, or do we want them stored in some public site and just have links to that site be coded into an attribute of this data? That could be another way of going about it. So please take the photographs that you need to document the feature. One is the minimum. You should definitely have at least one. Three seems to be a nice sweet spot if it's something that requires documentation from multiple angles. Like if you have a building, if you have a well, one might be fine. Um, if you have a long wall, you might want one from either end and one from the middle. So that's three right there. If you have a building, you may want one from either diagonal corner because each corner point will give you two sides of the building. Might want to close up of some important issues. So you can have 4 or 5. Just be judicious because the data set just swells and swells and swells. The other thing you can do from here is you can delete a point, and this is incredibly important. Please try not to delete points. I'm tempted to almost disable that ability in this data set. And once you get ready to hit the ground running, Jeffrey, please let me know. If you all, I'm not worried about BSC because I feel like they're going to be experts. I'm a little worried about when we start rolling this out to more and more DCR staff. I'm much more worried about them. Our consultants are going to be incredibly careful. So at some point, I don't know how to handle this. It's entirely possible people will be deleting and editing each other's data. That's just the risk you bear. We are regularly backing up the data. So if something horrible, terrible happens, we'll have some records. But just a request to be a good neighbor. Don't edit anyone else's point unless you have to delete your own point if you must. Um, And I think that's about all you have to do in this map. I think I've showed you everything. It's really very little. So on this side, layers, base map, legend are your friends. Over on this side, edit tool is where you're adding features. And then once you've added them, you go into edit mode to add an attachment, a photo, um, or to change anything about it or delete it if you made a mistake. And that is step one done. Yeah. Well, because I'm the owner of the map, it's making me cautious. Step two, I'm not going to demonstrate today. Step two is where you see this exact same, well, maybe not the exact same map, but very similar map on your smart device on the Field Maps application. Just do a search from if you're the Play Store or the what is the iPhone called? The iTunes? No, wherever you go in Apple to download and download apps. The App Store, thank you. It's a free app. Do a search for Esri, ESRI, Field Maps. Again, more information here on which one to get. Information here on how you set about working with field maps in the field. But now that you've seen what the smart form looks like here, it's going to look identical in field maps. The only caveat, the only reminder, if you look through the training over here, you'll see everything that's important to know. The one thing I will keep reminding you is that once I give you access, this map will show up underneath your group section. You'll be part of a group. It'll have some name. I'll communicate that to you once I've set it up. And in that group, there will be a map. It'll say CRI Fieldwork. You'll open it up. An important thing to do once you log into the Field Maps app, and you'll be logging in with credentials that I sent you, or however we set it up. An important thing is to go and change the resolution of your photographs. In field maps, it defaults to large. We do not want large resolution photographs. They bloat the data sets like crazy. So please go and change it to medium. And I have found that these apps are incredibly misbehaved. Every time there's an operating system update, they default back to large. So just because I'm very, very cautious and I rarely go into the field. I check every single day that I log into Field Maps. I go check. I quickly go to settings, go into Field Maps, go into settings, and I check to see what resolution do you have? And very often I see that it's switched back to large. I'll make sure to switch it to medium. So that's about all I have to say about the step two. If you work through the tutorials, you'll find out how you can do data collection in the field with a data connection if your device has a data plan, or if your device doesn't have a data plan, you can work offline. There's a set of steps that you take to download the map, do your stuff offline, do your data collection in the field without being connected, and then once you're back within range of a Wi-Fi, you reconnect to the internet and send your edits back up. That is the way that you do offline data collection. The other time that you may want to do offline data collection is if you're in a dead zone, under canopy, sometimes in urban areas where there's tall buildings nearby where you have really bad reception. Those are also times you might want to do offline. Unfortunately, offline takes a tiny bit of pre-planning, but we have definitely had our users expecting to be online, find out that there's really bad reception. They just drive away until they hit a Dunkin' Donuts or something, or a Panera, or somewhere where reception is good. They'll log on to the Wi-Fi, download the data, and now they're offline enabled without having to scrap the whole day. So in the state of Massachusetts, in any state, just drive a little, and I'm sure you'll be able to go to an offline workflow. So that's all there is for step two. Finally, the end of the process is step three. So let's assume you've entered data from the desk. You have then followed up with a field visit and entered more attributes, maybe moved the point, taken some photos from the Field Maps app on your smart device. Step three is you are now back at the desk, and there are certain things that you were not able to fill in the field that you're now going to populate from here. You'll click on that. You will be You'll be prompted to log in if you're not already logged in on this browser with your ArcGIS Online ID, which we've yet to figure out, but we will. We call it an app. It's really a map, but the technical term for it is an app. The About button on the right pops open to tell you how to use this app. It's just a really quick primer. And I'm going to give you a quick tour now of these buttons. Okay. They are all exactly what you think they are. This tells you what the legend is. This tells you what layers are in here. A couple of quick tips. If you click on the name, it also shows you the legend. This little thing here is really nice. It can turn all your layers on and off. More importantly, it can expand all layers, which means now it's working like a legend button, and it's showing you all the data layers that are loaded on this map that you can toggle on and off. See, just like before. And it gives you the legend. That's what the layer list is. These little ellipses buttons at the end are super cool. There's so much stuff you can do to it. Zooming to basically just, that was not a good idea. And it's a good time to demonstrate this wonderful button called Previous. Whoop, I'm back. Transparency. I don't know what a good example of that is because we don't really have any polygon layers, but let's say we did have this on the Mass Historic Commission. See how it's transparent, but maybe you want it to be a slightly more transparent. I go down here, I go to transparency. It's opaque right now. I'd increase. Do you see how it's lightening to where it's almost invisible? So you can mess with that. What else can you do? It's got pop-ups enabled, so when you click on it, it tells you information about all the data that occurs at that point. So if I had Mass Historic Commission on, here's an example. If I click over here, like that, this is called a pop-up. You'll notice it says 1 of 2. The bright blue line shows you what this pop-up is for DCRS owned and managed land. And then this little arrow lets you scroll through to the other thing. When I had clicked on that point, there were 2 data layers I clicked on. This is the second one that I clicked on. It was the MHC Areas Blue Hills Reservation Park, and here's all the information for that. Go all the way down and up. That's what a pop-up is. And when you disable a pop-up, if it's really annoying you and getting in the way, you can just go ahead and disable the pop-up. You can move this up and down to relayer the data layers if something's not letting you see things properly. View an attribute table. It pops open the attribute table down here, and here's this attribute table. I'm going to demonstrate the attribute table in a second, so I'm going to collapse that. Show item details. This is what I think I was trying to find before. That it just gives you some more details on what this GIS data is. Who develops it? What does it mean? There's even the schema sheet is there. So that's all about the layer list. The base map is very similar to what I showed you before, all those different base maps that you can flip between. This is pretty cool. If you go to so if I were to copy this link and email it to you guys, you'd be able to open up this map. But what I can do by clicking on the link options is really cool. If you go and click on this third option, and I totally don't pretend to know everything about this. If you find very cool uses for this, please let me know so I can tell other people. But if you click on that option, click the map to define the center of the map with map scale. And then if you click this on, remember layers visibility. Now I'm going to go click on the center of the map. And if I go back, did you notice how that link changed? Now if you won't be able to see it because you guys don't have access yet. If I were to copy and paste this link in an email to George, when he opens it up, not only is he going to see this map, and it'll prompt him to log in, and he'll log in, he'll see it at exactly this level of zoom and with exactly the layers that I have turned on, which is kind of nice. If I want to say, George, can you take a quick look at this? What am I missing here? Or is there a problem here? So that's what that button is. The print, I'll demonstrate after I show you draw, which is my favorite tool, even though it's not super friendly. This is where you get to mark up a map to communicate quickly with a friend or with a colleague. So um, that's not a good color. That's not a good transparency. Come on. There we go. Okay. Um, whatever it is that you want to do to mark up the map, right? Um, so I did all this markup. Unfortunately, you can draw and then change its keys, like its graphic attributes. You have to do it first. But now I've done this, I want to send George a picture so that I don't have to send him. Because if I had sent you that link before, it would give you the zoom level and the layers, but it wouldn't show you graphics. And I don't want to have to pull it into Word and do stuff. So here, I can export it as a PDF or a JPEG. If you hit the advanced, I can put in who it's from. Oh, hello. I'm cooperating. Oh my goodness, this is embarrassing me on purpose. There we go. You can choose to include the legend, and then you can hit print, and it's going to create a little temporary file. All of the stuff that I'm doing with it, the zooming and the panning and the drawing and the layers, just a quick reminder that this is extremely temporary. It's for this instance of the map. If I hit refresh right now, it all disappears. And then if I click on this, it becomes something weird has been going on that download button is not here. But here's the map that it creates. It's really very tacky. That's something, right? The legend is really not very good. But at least it gives you a scale bar. It gives you a legend. There's my name, tiny over there. The rest is all marketing from Esri. And there's the title of the map. I get to save image as. And this is the name, in their infinite wisdom, this is the name that they give it because it's just an internet thing at this point. I give it a good name. I save it on my hard drive. I insert it in an email to George, and there I'm gone. Or I say clear. I'm all done. That's what that is. The measure tool is what you think it is. You can measure areas. And once you've measured it, you can switch to different units. You can measure distance. You can measure point coordinates. So that's your tour of all of that. These are, and by the way, if you go to the About button, kind of sort of tells you there too what these are. Oh, I should change that. Collector is dead. Long live field maps. Okay. This is one of those batch tools. Where's Rhode Island? This is Rhode Island. I was in Connecticut before. That's where I was getting confused. The batch tool is, say I collected 2 points. Let's pretend I collected all these points today. Different data sets, right? Those are structures, and that is a building. And I need to now fill out the field visit date and the name and all that stuff, like the name of who did it. I didn't want to waste my time doing it because let's pretend that's really 50 points. So I get to do the batch tool. And actually, if you read here, it tells you exactly what it does. I use this tool, select everything. And now if I enter it once, it'll put it in, and you can move this around so you can see. very, very careful when you're doing these selections because other people might have been collecting in the same area the same day as you, and you don't want to put your name in if somebody else was collecting it. So, these tools are nice that they're different. Let me just clear that. This is, you hold your button down, you press the button down to draw it. But if you want to do something where, well, I did this one and that one, but not that one, you might want to pick this one up where you get to draw the vertices, and that way you can carefully jink around that one. And now I've done a more careful selection, right? Um, Whatever you enter once, it's going to enter it into 2 of these or 50 of these if you've selected 50 points. It also reports to you here how many features have been selected in each layer. This drop down behooves you to know what this means. Uh, to my understanding, what this tells you is, okay, so you've selected all these points, but you should know that some of them have that value in this field and some of them have this value in the field. You sure, right? You want to overwrite these? You also have the choice of blanking these out and say no value. So that's what that is. And then after you enter it, you say save and it will be overwritten. So this batch where it says common, this works on for the common fields. Those basic here, these fields, the really basic. When did you visit it? What's your name? Who is the person who visited it? What is the name of the DCR facility it's in? What town is it in? Are there any friends groups? That's for the common fields. The only other batch edit tool is for the objects data set, which I don't have any right now. But there was something about the nature of objects which made me think that you could very well come to a site where there's a bunch of objects that are very similar, and then you really want to put in stuff like type and primary material and secondary material. If you're looking and you're like, oh my God, there's 30 of these, then you have a choice. Fill it out for one in the field, maybe, and then come back, do yourself a favor, save that field work time, put in the other observations that you can only do in the field, but then come back, draw a big circle around the ones that you know you did, and enter it once and be done with it. The edit button is where you can go in and you can select any one point and edit everything about it. This is where the system crumbles. Instead of having that nice little smart form that I showed you in step 1 and that you saw in the field, you get an endless list of fields. No grouping, no rhythm, no rhyme. The only thing that I've done here is if it's a management recommendation, it's got a prefix that's rec.mg. If it's a threat, it's got an so use this if you have to. You might still be, if you feel like there's something you need to edit about attributes, you really may be better off going here. That first one, which was, because you're going to get that nice form, right? You're going to click here, go into edit and do that. So I do not recommend using that edit button at all, but it's there in case you need to add something. I don't want to not give you the ability. Last but not least, oh, well, actually, search. You're able to search. If you do a search like that, you'll notice that the results show up under 2 headings. General search is whatever the map thinks, where the map thinks Wampatuck State Park is. You can see these are the outlines of the DCR property. This is where you're sent. But instead, let's do that search again. If you go to the search results from the DCR property search, it highlights the whole property and it zooms you to the whole extent rather than one simple point. That's all that is. Last thing to show here before I show you that button is this little attribute table, which is set to show you the attributes of all the data. You'll notice that this filter by map extend button is pressed on. What that means is you'll notice that the table is, I'm just going to minimize that a little bit because the recording is not showing everything. You'll notice that it says 0 features and 0 selected. And that's because filter by map extent is on, which means it'll only show me the records for features that are in this map. And guess what? There's nothing visible in this map. For this structures data set, there's nothing visible in this map. The minute I zoomed out, it's showing me 89 features that are in this area. Let me zoom in tight. number goes down to 67 because there are 67 in the area that I'm looking at. Structures are which ones? These triangles? Okay, I'm going to zoom in even tighter. Here we are. So now we're looking at, so I could, of course, click on these one by one. I'm just going to turn this off because it's going to be very annoying. There. So I can click on this and see all the information about that particular structure. Or I can, if I want to look at this next to, in comparison with the others, I can look at it over here. The other thing I can do here is I can resize this so that it's a little bit bigger. I can maybe go here and my filter and map, I can turn that off. So now I'm looking at all 249 features that exist in this data set. And I might say, let me look at everything Jeffrey has done. Let me sort by visit name. And I know Jeffrey collected it. And I know, Sky Farm. I want to look at all these three. I can select the first one. Maybe I make this a little bit smaller. And I can hit the zoom to button. And boop, it took me there. I might want to look at all three of these. So I click on this gray part. I think I hold down the shift button. I select all three. And I say zoom to. Now I see all three on the same map. I might say, okay, I'm done looking at it. And now I don't have to click on each one of these. I can compare them side by side because I'm looking at all the attributes, all those hundreds and hundreds of attributes. I can clear the selection. The other thing that's very useful to do here is you can export this whole thing to a CSV file, a comma delimited file, which you can then, it'll go on your hard drive and you can then work with it in a spreadsheet. A filter is also extremely useful to have. You have to kind of know your data for that. Let's say I only want to see the points in the structure data set that were collected by Jeffrey Harris. I would add an expression. I would say, what field is that information recorded in? It's recorded in the field called visit name. This list of fields is the same as this list of fields here. So visit name, right there, is, I'm not exactly sure how it's spelled. Let's pretend I can't see it right on this screen. I'm going to say, I don't know. I think his name is Jeff, but I know his name is Harris. It'll do something 67. That may not be completely correct. Here's another way of doing that. You can look at this little cog thing. Oh, why is it not? Well, let me delete it for a second. I'm going to show you another way to build that exact same filter. You say visit name. There is. And then if you hit on the cog, the unique is pretty cool. It'll tell you everything that exists in that field, in that data set. So there might be 50 points with, say, CL's test. It'll only show it to you once. It's a really good way of summarizing the data and to say what all is in it. Oh, look, like if I had to quickly answer, if Jeffrey says, hey, can you tell me real quick who's been collecting data? This would be how I would answer the question because it's just so easy. I'd be like, yep, looks like Kevin and some people that I don't know. And there you go. So the filter is really, really cool. If you set it, it's very easy to forget you have a filter on. And if you set the filter first and then export it, it'll only, I believe, export the results of your filter. So keep an eye on that. I think you can really plumb the depths of everything that this can offer you just by playing. It's really difficult for someone to train you in every combination that you can use. But this is a broad brush look at everything that this app can do for you. Oh, I forgot my favorite one. This is an information summary that tells you what shape this whole project is in. So if I go to the home screen, it tells you for this entire area, there are 249 points in the structures data set. This is how much is in each one of these data sets. What's even better is if you open it up, you get to scroll through these. And I know that this is very high level. You can actually, no, here you can zoom to. And now that you're at a better level of zoom, you notice this change. This also only reflects what you're zoomed into. I can now go here and I can navigate through them. And it's a nice way of browsing the data instead of having to go through, um, and instead of having to click, 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 if that's what you want to do. I can also customize this to something that suits you better. If like these are just fields in the data set that I'm reporting here. If there's something else you would rather see, get back to me. If there's any other tools that you would like to be added, this is for those of you who do GIS like George, I imagine this is a web app builder app, and these are just out of the box widgets. So please let me know anything you would like to be changed that might make your life easier, that might make things easier. Um, I'd love to learn from your GIS skills, and I'm sure there's a way that PSC does their work or PAL does their work. If you guys have any suggestions, we're totally open to it. Uh, if it's a big departure from this, if it doesn't suit all of uh, DCR's needs, we might just spin up a different map for you to use. That's also a possibility. But we welcome this opportunity to improve our products, improve our workflows, learn from your field experiences on other jobs, as well as any feedback you have on this particular project. I think I'm done with the training part of it, so I'm going to stop my recording for now and I can take questions.